The most powerful navy in the history of humanity. 11 nuclear aircraft carriers, 90 destroyers, thousands of missiles capable of striking targets 1,000 kilometers away with precision. And yet, 20% of the world's oil remains trapped behind a choke point just 2 miles wide. Operation Epic Fury. 2 miles. That's the width of a shipping lane for a supertanker, narrower than a typical suburban district outside Paris. And as of March 2026, no commercial oil tanker can pass through it without risking being sunk. Not because Iran has won the war, it hasn't, but because losing a war and closing a strait are two very different things. Here's why. The Strait of Hormuz is the jugular vein of the global economy. On a normal day, between 15 and 17 million barrels of crude oil pass through this corridor. That's roughly one tanker every 20 minutes, 24 hours a day. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Iran itself, all export through here. Cut this strait, and you're not just cutting off Middle Eastern oil, you're cutting off the oxygen of the global economy. Brent crude surges past $100 a barrel, supply chains grind down, markets tremble. That is exactly what has happened. Today, commercial traffic through the strait is running at less than 5% of its normal level. Now, let's look at the forces involved. On the American side, the U.S. Navy has deployed considerable power. The carrier strike group centered around the USS Abraham Lincoln, supported by several Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, warships capable of launching Tomahawk cruise missiles, Standard Missile-3 anti-ballistic interceptors, and Mk-48 torpedoes. The SPY-6 radar on these destroyers can track 500 targets simultaneously. The Aegis system can intercept ballistic missiles in their terminal phase at altitudes exceeding 150 kilometers. On paper, a floating fortress. And that fortress has done its offensive job. Iran's conventional navy has lost between 85 and 90% of its surface capabilities. Iranian air defenses, largely neutralized. Ballistic missiles fired at U.S. bases in the region, intercepted at rates above 90%. Militarily, Iran is on its knees. So why is the strait still closed? Look at the map. Really look at it. The Iranian coastline runs along the strait for hundreds of kilometers. The usable navigation channels for a fully loaded supertanker are only 2 miles wide in each direction. It's a hard physical constraint. These ships weigh 300,000 tons and cannot maneuver freely. A very large crude carrier, a VLCC, moves at 15 knots at best. It needs several kilometers to stop. Its maneuverability is nearly zero. It is a target, slow, enormous, and highly flammable. From the Iranian coast, every point in the shipping lane is within direct range of a rocket fired from a pickup truck, an anti-ship missile launched from a van, a drone released from a fishing boat. Geography turns the strait into what military planners call a natural kill box. And Iran didn't need to spend billions to exploit it. Here's the calculation Navy planners are making, and they don't like it. An Arleigh Burke destroyer costs about $2 billion. Its Standard Missile-2 interceptors cost between $1 and $2 million each. An Iranian explosive naval drone, an unmanned surface vehicle, or USV, costs somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000. You saw what similar systems did to commercial ships in the Red Sea for 2 years. Iran watched, Iran learned, and Iran copied and improved the concept. Now do the math. To exhaust the missile inventory of a destroyer, all it takes is 40 or 50 cheap drones launched at the same time. The Phalanx CIWS, the 20mm rotating cannon firing 4,500 rounds per minute, can intercept targets, but its simultaneous engagement capacity is limited. 50 drones arriving from different directions at different altitudes, some skimming 2 meters above the water. That is the nightmare scenario. And that's not all. Mines, the oldest weapon in naval warfare and one of the hardest to counter. Iran possesses several types:
traditional contact mines triggered by direct collision, magnetic mines activated by a ship's electromagnetic signature, and supercavitating mines capable of projecting a jet of water at speeds exceeding 500 meters per second, enough to punch through the hull of a destroyer. One hit on a fully loaded supertanker, just one mine. The result? A catastrophic oil spill, astronomical insurance penalties, and suddenly no shipowner in the world is willing to risk a vessel in the strait, even with a U.S. Navy escort. That's the economic lock.
The Navy does have mine-clearing vessels. The Littoral Combat Ships, LCS, are designed for that mission. Lightly armed, maneuverable, equipped with mine-hunting sonars. But here's what the Pentagon press conferences don't tell you. The U.S. Navy has chronically underinvested in mine warfare for 30 years. Doctrine, training, equipment, all were deprioritized in favor of missiles, drones, and cyber systems. The result? The number of operational LCS ships with functioning mine countermeasure modules is limited, and some have documented structural issues, hull cracks, further reducing availability. Clearing mines in an active war zone while the enemy can continue laying new mines from virtually any small civilian boat is a mission that can take weeks, even months. And during that time, the tankers wait. The U.S. Secretary of Energy said it publicly in mid-March 2026. We're simply not ready. Not ready. There's another question admirals ask privately, one that never appears in official briefings. What happens if an American destroyer gets hit? In October 2000, a small explosive-laden boat struck the USS Cole in the port of Aden. 17 sailors were killed. The destroyer nearly sank. That was one suicide boat against a ship at anchor. In the Strait of Hormuz in 2026, with coordinated drones, mines, mobile coastal missiles, skiffs disguised as fishing boats, the threat is exponentially more complex. Iranian anti-ship missile launchers are mobile. They look like trucks. They move. You destroy them, they get replaced. It's the same model Ukraine used against Russian ammunition depots. Mobile systems are extremely difficult to eliminate permanently through airstrikes alone. And if a U.S. destroyer takes a coastal missile hit, if American sailors die escorting a Saudi tanker, the consequences are immediate. Congress erupts, American public opinion shifts, escalation becomes uncontrollable. That is why week after week, the Navy has refused escort requests from shipping companies, not out of fear, out of cold calculation. There is one actor in this crisis that almost no one talks about, yet it holds the final lock. Lloyd's of London, the maritime insurance markets. European regulations, Solvency II, effectively prevent insurers from covering ships in active war zones without catastrophic capital provisions. In practice, almost no commercial insurer will cover a tanker crossing the Strait of Hormuz right now. No insurance, no tanker, period. A Greek, Norwegian, or Japanese shipowner is not going to risk a $150 million vessel and 20 crew members for an oil cargo, even if the U.S. Navy escorts it. Because a naval escort doesn't protect against a mine laid the night before, and a naval escort doesn't reimburse a sunk ship. That quiet, technical, invisible economic barrier is as powerful as any missile battery. Now zoom out. Look at the broader intentions. China imports 40% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. In theory, Beijing should be pushing for the strait to reopen. In practice, Beijing watches, silently, with interest. China has built massive strategic reserves. It can absorb the crisis in the short term. Meanwhile, it watches the U.S. Navy stretch itself thin. It watches Gulf allies turn toward Beijing as a potential mediator. It watches American prestige crack. A strait closed for 2 more months might be the best geopolitical investment Beijing has ever made, without spending a single yuan. And while the Navy is fixed on the Gulf, the Chinese Navy continues military exercises around Taiwan. American resources are stretched, carrier groups are limited. That may not be a coincidence. On the Iranian side, the strategy is clear. Tehran is not trying to win a conventional naval battle. That battle's already lost. Iran is trying to survive long enough to transform military defeat into political victory. Every week the blockade lasts is another week of negotiation leverage. Every tanker waiting offshore is an argument at the bargaining table. Every dollar Brent crude rises above 90 increases pressure on Washington.
Iran is playing with borrowed time. But in this game, time is gold. So when will the strait reopen? Military experts point to a realistic window toward the end of April 2026 for a first partial flow, if several conditions are met simultaneously: clearing the critical minefields, suppressing remaining Iranian coastal firing capabilities, reactivating insurance coverage, and organizing militarized convoys with continuous air cover. It is not impossible, but it is far from guaranteed. Because the real lesson of this crisis is not technical, it is strategic. American military superiority is real, overwhelming even in a conventional fight. But military dominance and geographic control are two very different things. Destroying a navy can take weeks. Securing a commercial passage for unarmed civilian ships in an active war zone can take months. And during those months, the tankers wait. Prices surge. People pay at the pump. And somewhere, in a room in Beijing or a bunker in Tehran, someone looks at this map and smiles. Not because they defeated the US Navy, but because they understood something fundamental. In 21st century warfare, it is no longer enough to dominate the oceans. You also have to control the 2 miles of passage between you and the rest of the world. And that, so far, no one has solved. If this analysis brought you value, share it. The situation around the Strait of Hormuz will continue evolving in the coming weeks. Subscribe to follow developments in real time. See you soon.